Western countries are currently bringing through hate crime laws under the pretense of keeping people safe from offensive speech and hurty words. These laws will be used to control what can be discussed and to persecute people who criticise the government. Scotland's Hate Crime Act goes live on April the 1st. Under this law, if someone perceives that someone else is stirring up hatred against people because of their protected characteristics such as age, disability, religion, sexual orientation and gender identity, whatever any of that word salad means, then they can be reported to the police and get 7 years in jail. But the law can't even define what hatred is or what stirring up is. There doesn't need to be a victim or even any evidence, just the denunciation, and anyone can be offended by proxy if they perceive hate speech to have occurred. People carted off by the cops after baseless accusations? Hey, it worked great in Nazi Germany. I'm sure it'll be great for Scotland as well. You can be prosecuted for a joke cracked in the privacy of your own home. I bet the next law they bring through lets them monitor your Alexa. And police training says that hate speech may occur as part of a stage performance, so comedy in Scotland is going to be absolutely cucked. Comedians won't even be able to ask why the chicken crossed the road in case it's offensive to vegans. And the police could swoop on a pantomime and cart away the ugly sisters for misgendering Cinderella. So much for the land of freedom! Because misgendering will be a crime. So if you use pronouns for what someone is, rather than use the pronouns they've demanded you use, you're a criminal. Even as a self-identified woman, my pronouns are she/her. I think this is a bit silly. We've seen a trend in Scotland of male sex offenders identifying as women to get sent to a women's prison. And as courts in Scotland refer to criminals using their preferred pronouns, under the Hate Crime Act, a sex assault victim could be prosecuted for refusing to call the man who raped them by she/her pronouns. This is insanity. And if you think that's a breach of women's rights, well, I'm sorry, but the SNP don't care enough about women to make biological sex a protected characteristic under this law, even though women are targeted based on their sex and are hugely overrepresented as victims of violent crime. Instead, this law is going to protect people like asexuals, that's people who don't have any sex, who face zero discrimination, except maybe at orgies. And you don't even need to go to a police station to report hate crime. Over 400 third-party reporting centres have been set up across Scotland in places like a mushroom farm and a sex shop, so you can report someone for thought crime while you're picking up a double-ended clam breaker. Scotland's police have pledged to investigate every single report, raising the prospect of a deluge of vexatious accusations, as anyone can report anyone they don't like over some perceived offence. And even if the police don't prosecute, they'll record it as a non-crime hate incident, so the accused will have a black mark against their name in police records that will come up in HR department background checks. So good luck getting a job if you've ever gotten the wrong side of someone with blue hair. Left-wing activists are already bragging about weaponising the law to target people like J.K. Rowling for crimes such as misgendering, by which I obviously mean correctly gendering. Rowling has been advised to delete her Twitter account, but she's standing her ground. Hate crime is replacing actual crime as the key priority for Scotland's police. Last week they said they would no longer investigate every low-level crime in Scotland, including theft. Hey, I guess it's nicer to cart middle-class feminists off than it is to wrestle in the gutter with junkies. But while the SNP focus on increasing their grip on acceptable speech in Scotland, drug deaths are literally shooting up. No pun intended, please don't arrest me. You might be thinking, well, this is just Scotland, it doesn't affect me. Obviously misgendering is a more urgent problem in a land of hairy women and men who wear skirts. A law like this could never come to the rest of Britain. Trust me, it will. Scotland is being used as a testing ground, just like it was for the poll tax and nuclear power. Labour supported the Hate Crime Act in the Scottish Parliament. They'll bring it through to the rest of Britain when they get into power. To get everyone in the mood for denouncing each other for thought crimes, Humza's hapless government have released a ridiculous campaign to promote the Hate Crime Act, featuring the hate monster. Let's have a look.
You might know this thing here. It's the hate monster. When you're feeling insecure, when you feel angry.
I feel insecure about Scotland just watching this campaign.
He'll be there, feeding off the emotions. Getting bigger and bigger, till he's weighing you down. He'll make you want to have a go at somebody. A neighbour, somebody on the street, on a night out, security guy on the door, somebody in the chippy, your taxi driver. He'll make you want to vent your anger, just 'cause folk look or act different for you. The hate monster wants you to feel what you need to show you're better than them. Then, before you know it, you've committed a hate crime. Doesn't make you feel better though, does it? Maybe for a minute, but then you just feel worse, don't you? Because the hate just hangs about like a bad smell. But it doesn't need to be like this. You're better than that, and you know it. You've got all this energy, so do something positive with it. The hate monster doesn't like that. In fact, he hates it.
The hate monster. If this was a breakfast cereal, I'd buy it.
Go on. Be good to yourself. Don't feed the hate monster.
Why are they using a Sesame Street style cartoon for 5-year-olds to target angry young men? Do they know anything about angry young men? Where are the boobs and the robots? Where's the 6-hour podcast on ancient Rome? Then before you know it, you've committed a hate crime. Look, an essential tenet of the law is that it should be difficult to unknowingly commit a crime. You can't imagine someone suddenly realising they're burgling a house or selling heroin, but Police Scotland themselves admit in this video that people will find themselves accidentally committing hate crimes. Hilariously, the hate monster campaign itself breaches the new hate crime law. According to Police Scotland, hate crime is any crime which is understood by the victim or any other person as being motivated wholly or partly by malice or ill will towards a social group, one of the protected characteristics of disability, race, religion or belief, sexual orientation or transgender identity. The campaign by Police Scotland says that it targets young men aged 18 to 30, particularly those from socially excluded communities who have white male entitlement. They're implying that hate is driven by poverty. This is blatant classism, and they're targeting people based on age and gender. That's a triple hate crime. And this term, white male entitlement, is a known racist dog whistle used to denigrate and minimise the opinions of white men based on their race and sex. This is even more serious when you consider that Police Scotland are an armed, ideologically motivated organisation under the command of Humza Yusuf, who spews anti-white racist rhetoric.
The Lord President, white. The Lord Justice Clerk, white. Every High Court judge, white. The Lord Advocate, white. The Solicitor General, white. The Chief Constable, white. Every Deputy Chief Constable, white. Every Assistant Chief Constable, white. The Head of the Law Society, white. The Head of the Faculty of Advocates, white. Every Prison Governor, white. And not just Justice. The Chief Medical Officer, white. The Chief Nursing Officer, white. The Chief Veterinary Officer, white. The Chief Social Work Advisor, white. Almost every trade union in this country headed by people who are white. In the Scottish Government, every Director General is white. Every chair of every public body is white. That is not good enough.
For this reason, I've reported Police Scotland to Police Scotland for hate speech. Hopefully Police Scotland will soon show up to arrest Police Scotland. Of course, it won't happen. These laws will only be used by the SNP to go after their enemies and silence their critics. We've already seen how this happens with women such as Marian Miller. She's a feminist who's critical of the SNP's gender ideology, which allows men to self-identify as women to gain access to female-only spaces. She was prosecuted after sharing a tweet of a suffragette ribbon, which was reported as transphobic hate crime because it could be perceived to be a noose, which is obviously ridiculous. It looks nothing like a noose, it looks like a suffragette ribbon, because that's what it is. The case was thankfully thrown out of court, but the process of being arrested and charged subjected Marian and her children to a huge amount of distress. The state was sending a message to other people who opposed them saying, we can come after you. Even if we know we can't prosecute you, we can arrest you, terrify your children, smear your name. The process is the punishment. The Hate Crime Act is also promoted with videos that ironically feature a senior member of an Islamist organisation that engages in hate speech and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. But obviously, they won't be prosecuted. You can see her here wearing a headscarf so as not to inflame the lustful passions of any men who gaze upon her hair.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Lindsay Taylor, a board member of Muslim Council Scotland. Islamophobia, unfortunately, is something that our community is all too well aware of. From the physical and verbal attacks in the street, things that we have to deal with on a daily basis simply for being Muslim. It also comes in the form of not having access to prayer spaces, to halal food, and to the little things that we need as Muslims. But it can also come in the form of your colleagues. When they ask you after a terrorist attack happens, how can you justify that and explain it? But that's not for you to justify. That's why Islamophobia Awareness Month is so important.
Another video promoting hate crime laws in Scotland has a very sinister, threatening vibe.
Dear homophobes,
racists,
bigots, transphobes and disablists. There are things this country doesn't welcome.
haters are not going to hate here.
That's why if we see anything, we're calling the police.
We believe in acceptance.
And it's time you accept that.
Yours, Scotland.
And it's the impact on comedy that concerns me the most as a comedian. Scotland has a rich history of iconoclastic, boundary-pushing comedians. Billy Connolly, Jerry Sadowitz, Frankie Boyle, who've gleefully redrawn the lines of comedic acceptability, whether it's Connolly on primetime TV talking about parking a bike in a corpse's arse crack, Boyle being deeply misogynist and ableist about Katie Price's son while still being undeniably funny, or Sadowitz saying of the incarcerated Nelson Mandela, "You lend some people a fiver, you never see them again." Scotland's new Hate Crime Act would send them all to the gulag. And it's not just the comedian making the joke who'll be at risk. Promoters, writers, venues and directors can all be prosecuted over what the comedian says, piling on layers of self-censorship. It's already happening. A year and a half ago, I was booked to perform in Glasgow. The show was cancelled by the venue, despite being sold out, as they were worried it would constitute hate speech. After negotiations, the show went ahead on the proviso that stewards sat by the stage monitoring the content of the show for hate speech, an attitude to comedy only seen in Iran and the era of Lenny Bruce. I genuinely felt less at risk of persecution from the state when I performed an illegal underground show in an actual Islamic caliphate than I did performing in Glasgow. And me and my Comedy Unleashed mates want to put on a show in Scotland on April the 1st, the day the hate crime law goes live. A show that would undoubtedly sell out, but so far, no venue wants to touch us. They're all scared of blowback. What a tragic state of affairs that the home of the Enlightenment and William Wallace now cowers before its authoritarian government. Other countries are incredibly taking their hate crime laws even further than Scotland's. Canada is proposing to arrest people who are suspected of being likely to commit hate crime in the future. I mean, why waste time waiting to see if someone will perceive someone as saying something likely to stir up hatred when you can lock them up now? The era of pre-crime is here, and it's not even a real crime. And in Canada, truthfulness won't be a defence. If you say something that offends someone, you can be prosecuted, even if you can show that what you said was factually correct. Good luck publishing facts about IQ distribution and crime statistics in Canada. Ironically, Scotland's Hate Crime Act pretends to abolish the offence of blasphemy, but in reality, it just introduces a new one, enforcing the new religious ideology that diversity is strength, men are women, and the word of the SNP is sacrosanct. The Hate Crime Act is fixing a problem that doesn't exist. Scottish people are warm and welcoming. Neo-Nazi rallies are not a burgeoning issue in Scotland, despite the establishment's best efforts to alienate working-class white people. Surveys show that people are becoming more tolerant and open. People aren't seething with hate because some people look different to them. People are concerned about uncontrolled immigration from medieval cultures, the disintegration of British communities, parallel societies with completely different values, grooming gangs being allowed to target children while authorities are too paralysed by racial sensitivities to react, biological males suddenly being allowed access to women's safe spaces, children being sterilised and maimed to fit in with the current mania for gender transitioning. Governments should listen to these concerns because they're valid, and it wouldn't be the first time people have been right and authoritarian governments have been wrong. And comedians don't need to be legislated by puritanical speech crime laws. We already perform in front of a jury. The audience. We're not spouting hate speech for the simple reason that audiences are generally nice people and wouldn't accept hate speech. I mean, unless it was really funny. Given that Scotland has already seen the prosecution of people such as Count Dankula for funny jokes, there would seem to be more of a case for rolling back Scottish thought crime law than adding to it. J.K. Rowling makes points about protecting women that just a few years ago wouldn't just be acceptable, they'd be progressive. With wokeism driving such a constant change in acceptable norms, doesn't it make sense for public speech to be loosened rather than stifled? And isn't there an obvious danger in wielding power over the speech and thought of others? As the Jewish comedic novelist Howard Jacobson says, he's far more threatened by those who would wipe out ethnic jokes than by those who would make them. He's not the only one. The Scottish Police Federation criticised the Hate Crime Act, saying, "This bill would move even further from policing and criminalising of deeds and acts to the potential policing of what people think or feel, as well as the criminalisation of what is said in private." The Law Society of Scotland also voiced reservations that the law would threaten freedom of expression. The Catholic Church is concerned that it will render the Bible illegal, while the National Secular Society is concerned that it will make criticism of religion illegal. And I doubt we'll see Police Scotland targeting the real hatred in Scotland, the anti-Tory and anti-English xenophobia that's that's festered under years of rule by rabid nationalists. The SNP have marched shoulder to shoulder with ethno-fascist group Sinn Gael while the police did nothing. But they're not a police force anymore. They're the street enforcement arm of the insane left-wing ideologists who've taken control of Scotland. Anyway, thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe and share it with a Scottish mate so they know they can now stitch up their enemies by maliciously reporting them for thought crime. And if you want to support me making these videos and get access to extra content and live Zoom shows and stuff, please consider becoming a Patreon. From as little as £3 a month, you can help me get rich enough to start a new libertarian paradise on a disused oil rig. Okay, thanks. I've been Leo Kears. Bye. Bye-bye.